Well, hi folks, and welcome back to Naturally Adventurous. This is Ken Behrens, joined as always by my friend Charley Hess.
Hello.
This week we're going to be back on Charley's Top 10 Lifetime Mammals. That's the main event this week. But yeah, first of all, I guess, Charley, you have been working on creating another tutorial for the online school of birding, right?
Yep, it's been a busy week. I remember people used to say, never work with children or animals. It's just totally unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. But it certainly has its challenges. So basically in this tutorial, I want to just give some examples of how to get kids into birding. So I kind of show, how to use a certain thing, how to use an app or whatever. And then I kind of go through it and do a little workshop with Felix, sort of demonstrating how it works. So but he, as you know, Felix, he doesn't always stay on script.
He's hilariously contrarian. Whatever you say, he wants to contradict it. That's what it seems to me.
Yeah. So
I think, Charley, you've managed to turn him into a fanatical birder, and despite his contrarianism, so I think that you've established your credibility to be the person doing this tutorial.
I know a lot of people who have tried to get their kids into birding and failed. So I think there are a few little techniques, there's a few little tricks you can use. Sometimes it's just, communication style or, not being too pushy, whatever. But I think anybody with kids that they want to get into birding or grandkids that they're keen to get out birding with them, I think will find it quite useful. So, I hope people watch it and I hope it's useful for people.
I'm sure it'll be great. I'm looking forward to seeing it. My son Rianala, he loves snakes. I found this cool snake in the garden a few days ago and grabbed it. It's one of these very gentle, non-poisonous Malagasy snakes. And I said, "You want to hold it?" And he said, "Yeah." And he held it and he didn't hold it too strong. He didn't hurt it, and he had this big grin on his face. And then this morning he spotted a snake in the garden, and he came running into the house. Dad, there's a snake in the garden. And we ran out and see this beautiful four-lined snake. So it's kind of cool. That was my first natural history love, and seems to be his.
You know what? It's nice being in Madagascar where there's no dangerously poisonous snakes. I guess there's a couple of mildly venomous ones, yeah?
Very mildly, right. But I was thinking about that. Having kids would be around snakes could be quite anxiety-producing in South Africa, eh?
My son was growing up in South Africa, and I kept a little reptile list for our garden, and I think we got about 12 snakes that we identified on our property, and I think 3 of those were deadly.
Oof.
And and you've got a little 2-year-old kid or a 3-year-old kid just running around the garden playing, with Mozambique spinning cobras, with vine snakes, with puff adders.
Jeez.
It was always a big worry, yeah? And I wanted him to be interested in them, but we didn't want him to be reckless and just go and try and touch them or catch them himself, eh? So it was always a thing to just come and tell us, you can spot them and then come and tell us. And in the end, he became very good at spotting snakes, and we would always sort of catch them as a family, but we told him he was never allowed to handle them himself.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't want him just to have blind fear of snakes, but I also do think about, if we're in Africa, I don't want him running up and grabbing a vine snake, because it's such an innocent-looking little green snake. In Madagascar, you wouldn't hesitate to just grab that. But yeah,
exactly.
Oh, cool.
Very good. So, what have you been up to this week?
Not a lot. Catching up. One cool thing was that though I did a guest appearance on another podcast.
Oh, fantastic.
This was with a guy called Tony Crosdale. And he has this whole wildlife observer network of a bunch of different podcasts. He's in a bunch of them, and then some of his friends, and this network of people. Quite cool. I would definitely recommend people check out the Wildlife Observer Network. There's there's one podcast I listened to about urban fishing in Philadelphia. Some of his podcasts have a little bit of like a social bent, with even a political bent, which is interesting. It's tricky territory, but I think it's good to talk about these things. But the podcast I did with him, it's called Nature's Hype Man, and we did. He's a big fan of our podcast, and so we did 5 places where it's easy to see a difficult animal. We each did 5.
Oh,
it was quite a fun concept. So, like an example of mine was snow leopard in Ladakh. So it's this sort of mythical, near mythical animal that is almost impossible to see, and then suddenly it just became seeable in one place. So it was a fun episode. Check that out on the Wildlife Observer Network, and we'll definitely have Tony on this podcast at some point. We'd love to chat to him about music. I was thinking of chatting to Tony about music because he's in a band and he spent a lot of his life in the world of music. So he'll have an interesting perspective on birding compared to music, I think.
Oh, it'll be cool. Yeah, I look forward to chatting to him.
But I guess we'll get to today's main event, which is the rarefied territory on your top 10 mammals. I think we're up to number 3, which is Ai.
Yes. So this is a very unique animal. And as our listeners will know, Ken lives in Madagascar. I've guided them many, many times. I've spent months and months in the country. But until very, very recent, until maybe 2 years ago, I still hadn't seen this animal. So there's 5 families of lemurs in Madagascar. And one of those families is the Ai. It's the only one species in the family. And it's totally unique animal. It's just this kind of like weird, shaggy haired, kind of scraggly. It looks a bit like an alien. It's got these big ears and this weird little face, and then it's got this little, very thin, extended digit that goes out that it can use to sort of poke in holes and get little scraps and grubs and things. Yeah, so it's a very weird looking thing, eh?
You know, the teeth grow perpetually like rodents.
Do they?
So they constantly have to gnaw on things. So they gnaw something open, and then they put that bizarre little skeletal middle finger in, and they work out whatever it is, grubs, as you said. But one of the weirdest things to me is that the middle finger, the tip of the middle finger, has 360-degree motion. It's such a weird animal.
It's bizarre. I've known about this animal since I was a kid. I think I had a poster of it in my room when I was about,
Really?
10 years old. Yeah. Because I was a member of this thing called the Dodo Club. It was a sort of little kids animal club for the Jersey Zoo, the Jersey Wildlife Preservation Trust, which is now the Durrell Institute. But 4 times a year they would send you a magazine and they'd send you a poster. And one time I got this Ai poster in the mail. So it had pride of place on my wall.
Did you admit to other kids that you were a member of the Dodo Club?
I don't think it ever came up. No. It was a secret. I was a closet member. Yeah, just kept it to my room. But I've always been crazy about endangered species of mammals and whatever. So it was always interesting reading about all these endangered species and things. But so I did start guiding in Madagascar, and I was seeing all these cool lemurs and. And it was always like, oh, well, didn't see Ai this time, but, and I heard, it's very, very occasionally seen. And for the first couple of times I came here, I didn't go to the north, and I guess it's seen a little more often in the north than other places.
Definitely.
And I know one place we go, Masawala National Park, it was, I think, fairly regularly seen. And I think I did maybe 2 or 3 times I went up there on these extensions that we do, and I would always go out at night a little bit with the clients. They'd be tired, they'd go to bed, and I would go back out, and I'd spend hours just wandering around on my own. And the lodge owners would be like, oh yeah, well, we saw it last week, and it came to a fruiting tree, but then of course there was no fruit left in the fruiting tree, whatever, and it just never happened. And I think we saw little scratch marks. I think the local guides can sort of recognize the little scratch marks or little gnawing marks on fruit or on trees. So and it just never seemed to be happening. And I think there was a local guide in that area who was a brother of one of our other guides, and I think you told me that he had a spot to see this thing near Maroancetra, was it?
Yep, Maroancetra.
The town. So I think we sort of contacted him, and I was taking up a tour group. And, I don't think I was telling them anything yet, but I was trying to organize it so we could go out for a night and see this thing. And anyway, I think about maybe 2 days before we got there, we just called to check it was still on. And then he said that the forest that it was in had been burnt down. And I was like, oh no, you were joking. And we got there, we thought maybe you'd find a backup or whatever, and it was just like, it just wasn't happening.
I remember that.
So
Major
this kind of like really good chance that we had to see this thing kind of vanished into thin air. But there was still the lodge that we went to in Massawa, and it was occasionally seen. And we got there, and the lodge owner told us, yeah, it's been seen recently. I think we had it last week. And I was like, okay, great. We're really gonna make an effort. And again, just night after night, going out, hours and hours and hours, and then this thing just wasn't there. Just wasn't happening. And on my very final tour in Madagascar, the last one that I did, which I think was a couple of years ago now, I did it with a very good friend of ours from Connecticut who brought a group over, and I'm trying to think what happened. I think we had a cancellation. I think very occasionally you get bumped or there's some kind of double booking or something like that. But in the end, we had to come up with an alternative. We were a few days out, and we had to think, okay, instead of these nights here, we're going to have to think of something else to do. And then I think it might have been you saying, well, you could go down to this lodge where they have eyes, you got time to do it. And I was like, yep. So sorted out. So I think you asked your wife to see if there was availability in that lodge. And this place, it's in the sort of natural range, but I think they were sort of reintroduced animals on an island. And I thought, that's right. Yeah. You know what? I'll take it. I've had so many years. I've had, 8 years of coming here and not seeing this thing. I need to see this animal. So we went there, and we kind of drove, quite a few hours down to the sort of lowlands and in the east, and we got to this big lake, and then we're transferred to a boat, and we cross over a lake and through a channel, and it was it was quite an adventure getting there. It was very scenic, beautiful lake, and it was sort of near the coast. It was very nice, and we got to the lodge. And we settled in. It was a beautiful lodge. It was sort of like a lagoon, but it had a beach on it, and people were sort of swimming in the lagoon and relaxing on the beach, and there was nice food there, and it was great. And it was like, and then the time came, and you go out just before dusk, and you sort of cross over, and then you arrive at this spot, and there was people from other lodges all there, and there was quite a few people. I can't remember, maybe 20, 30 people in total. And I think they split up into smaller groups of, say, 8, 10 people. And then each one is taken by a local guide to a feeding site. And they feed these things on coconuts. And they've got like branches, and they sort of wedge the coconut in. And every night after dark, these animals come in, and then they start sort of gnawing holes into the coconuts and sticking their fingers inside and pulling things out. And I wasn't, I was thinking, this is going to be a bit of a glorified zoo. But I got to this island, and it was beautiful. Yeah, it was beautiful. It was all natural
proper
habitat.
Forest. Mm.
Yeah, beautiful forest, and these nice little quiet sandy trails, and you're walking around by flashlight. And they tell you when you get close, you got to turn your flashlights off. And I think they put a sort of softer light on, and then you can take pictures of these things. And there's something I'm not very good at is in advance seeing how big things are going to be. I'm kind of bored by this thing weighs 5 kilos, or it's 70 centimeters long or whatever. Those kind of details just bore me. Some guides come out with this stuff, but I always like to sort of just see thing and just see for myself how big it is. And we're going along this little trail, and then we get into this little clearing, and there was a feeding spot, and they put the light, and I see this animal, and I was absolutely blown away. It was about 3 times the size that I thought it was going to be. It was like this huge, it was like, twice the size of a big house cat with this long tail. And it just kind of turned its head, and it looked at us. And I almost fell over in shock. This thing, look, I don't know, do you know Pocket Monsters?
No.
It's like a Japanese animation where you get all these like weird little animals that are like small monsters. You'll be watching this until you're sick of it, I tell you. But the first thing I did was I looked at this thing. I thought, oh my god, it's a pocket monster. And this thing with these huge bulging orange eyes and this little weird kind of skinny skeletal face and these just completely oversized ears, like, and it's this shaggy coat, and it just didn't look real. It didn't look like it should be a real animal. It looked like a sort of made up animal, and it just completely knocked me off my feet. I've never been so shocked to see any kind of wild animal than this. It was amazing, and I just stood there thinking, what on earth is that, and it looked at us for like a couple of seconds, and then it just got back to its coconut, started gnawing, and it was like just gnawing with these little sharp teeth and sticking its finger in and taking a little bit of coconut out and then gnawing a little bit more, and then it kept changing its angle. It would sort of jump up the branch and sort of come from above and sort of gnaw a little bit and then go round the side, and we were just a few feet away. I mean, we were like 10 feet, probably not even 10 feet, maybe 8 feet away. And it was too, for my big camera, it was too close. I would have to back right up, and then other people were standing in front of me, and I was trying to get a picture, and I was taking videos, and it was amazing. And we watched this thing for, I don't know how long, like 15 minutes. And then we walked along the trail and got to another one, and then this other thing came, and the branches were a little different, and the lighting was a little different, and we just spent probably like 30-40 minutes watching these amazing animals, and it was incredible. And I was like, why have we not done this before? And it's and I think now I told Keith, my boss, I said, you've got to offer this place. And I think now he's talking about doing like sort of this enigmatic wildlife tours there, because it's really the chance of a lifetime to see these things so well, Anyway, I know you've had other encounters with this. You'd seen it long before me, and I was very jealous. But I feel a lot calmer now.
It's got to be. I mean, the only animal I can think of that's similarly bizarre is platypus. I mean, I can't even think of another. If you're talking about aquatic animals, there's some pretty bizarre ones. But in terms of terrestrial animals, it's certainly in the world's 5 most bizarre animals easily.
It's bizarre,
and it's also quite off the radar.
Yeah, it's a sort of animal that a Victorian explorer would bring back a skin, and nobody would believe that it was real. They'd be saying that he'd made it up, like they did with platypus. But yeah.
Yep. Whew. Well, I was in Ranamafana National Park recently and camped there for a few nights, and we spent one night camping in this place that is known as a good spot for aye-ayes. And one of the guys I was with, actually one of Emil's sons, is studying aye-ayes right now, so he's quite knowledgeable. So I was quite like secretly optimistic that we would spot an aye-aye. And we got to the camp, and right next to camp is this huge rami tree. Rami is, the genus is Canarium, and these are this is their main food in the forest. There are these huge nuts, like super hard nuts, on the rami tree. And so William went out, and below the tree he found some very recently gnawed nuts with like beaver incisor marks. And so we knew an aye-aye had been there in the last couple days. So I really thought, this is going to happen. And of course it didn't. We walked around for hours and shone lights on the tree many, many times, and no aye-aye. Emil's been sort of guiding and going into the forest for 30 years in Ranamafana, and he's seen aye-aye 11 times. So it's 11. It's kind of like pangolin in Africa. It's this thing where like people have been in the bush their whole life and never seen it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Anyway.
That's hey, I'm proud to have catalyzed your number 3 lifetime mammal, Charley. That's quite an honor.
Yeah, it was. I remember very vividly you saying, "Well, you could go to this place," and I was like, "Yep, sort it out."
Aye, Captain.
Aye.
That's a good one. It's a good story. I don't think I've actually seen your photos, so I look forward to seeing those, and we'll put those on the gallery.
I've got a couple of nice ones.
Yeah, great.
Put on.
All right, well, on to number 2, which is a great one of my African favorites, black rhino.
Yeah. So I think quite a while ago when we started doing these top 10 mammals, one of mine was Indian rhino.
That's right.
And I think when we talked about that, I was talking about how obsessed I used to be. with rhinos when I was a kid. That was my dream, was to be like a rhino biologist. So, and black rhino was my first rhino, and it was actually with you. It was my first
in Etosha,
time,
right?
Yeah, in Etosha, yeah.
In Namibia.
And Ken was guiding an American couple who are very good friends of ours now, and I was just along for the ride. I was being trained to guide in Namibia, and it's a wonderful place. Etosha National Park. It's really one of the top national parks in Africa, certainly in southern Africa. It's very dry, kind of almost like desert-like. It's got this huge white pan, and then very, very kind of dry habitat all around. And you get, mopane forests and a sort of thorn scrub and all sorts of stuff. But it's really one of the strongholds for black rhinos. And this is a critically endangered species. I think in 1960 there was about 100,000 of them. And by, when was it now? Maybe by 95, I think that had gone down to 2,000 something. It had gone down. I think it had decreased by 98%, which is just terrifying.
Definitely unsustainable. But they're back up now to around 5,000, I think. So they've recovered a little bit,
to about
but
5.
They might have recovered a little bit beyond that, and then with this recent wave of poaching, I think they're down again.
Yeah, it's a very sad story. They're a little bit more wary than white rhinos. White rhinos you can often just see walking around in the open. They're grazers. They've got these kind of square lips, and they'll just stand in the open and eat grass, and they'll often come down and drink during the day. But black rhinos, they tend to sort of stay in kind of scrub habitat, hide away a little bit more, and they usually come to drink at night.
Less social too, I would say. White rhino, you can see little groups of them, but black rhinos fairly solitary.
Although at nighttime at watering holes, you do get interactions which are really fascinating to watch. So in Etosha, they've got several fenced camps where you can go, and there's one called Okakweyo, and it has a water hole and a kind of raised wall with a big fence, and you sort of look down over the water hole, and it's fantastic. During the day, it's full of animals. At nighttime, you can see all sorts of stuff. Sometimes you see lions and hyenas and all sorts of things coming in. But usually, at around just at dusk, the first black rhino just kind of comes and has a drink. So you can wait there, and you can see it from miles away, and just slowly comes in. And the first night that we were there, we were watching this beautiful kind of blood red sunset. It was absolutely stunning. And then I remember very vividly seeing this black rhino just very slowly coming in to drink. There was just so much suspense and just tension building up, and then I finally saw this thing, and all this kind of desire to see rhinos since I was a kid, it just kind of like fell out of me. I almost burst into tears. I had like a big lump in my throat here. And it was just it's one of the biggest wildlife moments of my life, and it was just a lifetime dream to see my first rhino. Yeah, just fantastic.
It's funny because I must have been standing right next to you, and I didn't even realize you were having this moment. No, you were very stoic about it on the outside.
Yep. Anyway, we went on to see many more of these at waterholes, some during the day. We got photos. We saw interactions at night. You'll sometimes get a male and female coming in. Sometimes we'll see like a female with a calf, and there'll be a male, and there'll be like these standoffs, and they're just so charged. They're really just amazing. Watching the waterholes at night, it's just an amazing experience. Anyway, but I want to tell you about my very best sighting of black rhino. We had a guide at Tropical Birding, and he actually left the company, but before he left, he'd planned a tour, and it was to take some family friends of his around on a safari, and they weren't birders, but he left, and I was sort of asked, would you mind taking some non-birders around and just showing them some wildlife, whatever? And I was like, yeah, sure, it'll be fine. And we had this, it wasn't a regular itinerary, but, they added all sorts of little extra things, in different places. And one of the things that they added was that we were going up to the northwest of Namibia, a very dry area. and there was a lodge that did rhino tracking. And this is one of the little extras that they'd done on this safari. And I don't think they really knew what was involved. I mean, these weren't bird watchers. They weren't even really nature people, but they just wanted to go on a safari, say they'd done it. And we went there, and then it came for the day of our sort of rhino trekking, and nobody really knew exactly what this entailed. And also, I didn't really know what it entailed. But it basically meant sort of driving around and looking for tracks, for scat or footprints, and then following it and trying to find these animals during the day, and then walk up and then walk close to them on foot. And we were told about some things that we had to do, because also in that area you get like desert elephants, you get desert lions. You have a chance of coming across these things on foot. So they give you these little talks about, if we come across lions on foot, just all stay together as a group and just follow instructions, whatever. And these people were just terrified, And I was like, no, it's fine. But we located the rhinos and we saw them at a distance, and then we started walking towards them. And rhinos, they don't have very good eyesight, but they have a good sense of smell. But I think we were downwind of them. So they thought it was, we were going to be able to walk up and sort of watch them. And black rhinos especially, they say black rhinos are a lot more dangerous than white rhinos.
Yep.
They can run a lot faster, and they're a lot more prone to charging at you. But this family, they were just obsessed with lions. They were like, oh, we're going to get eaten by lions. And I was like, no, don't worry about the lions. Let's stay safe with the black rhinos. So we sort of started walking towards them, and there was a mother with a mostly grown calf, maybe 3/4 her size, and we were sort of getting closer and closer, sort of using the trees as cover. We'd sort of go behind one tree and look at them with our binoculars, and then we'd sort of go towards another tree and hide behind it and look. And we were getting closer and closer. And this family was really starting to get a little bit scared. They were like, okay, no, I think that's fine. We can go back now. And the guide's no. And he wanted to, I think he thought that the closer he got us to these animals, the bigger we were going to tip him. So he was really trying to keep us happy. But these people were just terrified, And we were getting closer and closer, and they were like, no, please, let's go. And I was like, no, it's okay, don't worry. These guys are the experts, they're going to keep us safe. They really know these animals. I didn't know this, I was assuming this. And then we were getting closer and closer, and we were sort of stepping out from behind this tree. And this was the last tree before the tree that they were lying under, in the middle of the day. And we sort of went outside, and we're just moving away from the tree a little bit, and I guess the wind changed, and then these two huge rhinos that could quite easily kill us, they just shot to their feet, and they were just looking scared, and they're looking aggressive, and then I look at the guide, and he actually looks a little bit worried now. He didn't look as calm as he was before. And he was like, oh, okay, let's go behind the trees. And these rhinos, they're just kind of like, they're just standing their ground, and they're almost like, scratching their front, their feet in the dust, like a bull. And then we're just very, very, very carefully walking behind this tree, and the adrenaline, because I knew, I don't know if they knew, but I knew how dangerous this was. And I was so energized, and my heart was just beating, and I was just full of adrenaline. And we sort of went behind the tree and just sort of took a few more pictures. And I think in the end, these two animals, they bolted, and they just ran off, and it was just so exhilarating. And I don't know what this family thought, but for me, this was just. It was an elderly couple with their 3 sort of grown children. They were all like in their 20s, so they were loving it. They were loving the adrenaline.
Right.
They thought, oh yeah, this is great. They were the sort of people that would normally do bungee jumping or something like that, But yeah, and they were really excited to get closer and closer, and it was amazing. It was absolutely fantastic, and it was really the chance of a lifetime. So yeah, that was my black rhino story.
That's a good story. I don't think I've ever heard the full version of the story.
It was amazing. But the sad thing is, I think there used to be maybe 20 or 30 desert rhinos in that area, and it's not in a park. It's sort of totally open, no fences,
open desert,
and
right?
almost all of those rhinos were poached.
Oof.
I think we went there again a few years later. I was with another group, and I think there was only one rhino left in that area.
Wow. Microcosm of the plight of the black rhino in general. It's
yeah. And in Etosha National Park, we've got, every time I go there, we see more and more dehorned rhinos. So this is one of the techniques people are trying to use to protect the rhinos. Is sort of you tranquilize them, and then you go in, and then you safely cut down the horn, so without sort of making them bleed or whatever. You just sort of you cut it off with a chainsaw, and then sort of file it down a little bit, so there's no real reason for poachers to kill them. But they still do, and one of the reasons they do it is because they may spend 2 days tracking a rhino, and if they get there and it doesn't have a horn, they'll almost just shoot them out. They'll shoot them out of spite.
Yeah.
Or even if there's a little bit of regrowth or whatever, they'll just chop it off, because rhino horns, it's worth more than gold. It's worth a fortune
For fingernails.
Yeah,
Valuable
it's just
keratin. Right?
Yeah, for the Chinese medicinal market. But it's a very sad thing. And, with just such large quantities of money on the table, people are willing to risk their life to poach them. And it's all, it's come, and some places they actually shoot to kill the poachers. And the poachers they'll have automatic weapons. And if park rangers sort of, they come across poachers, it'll be a gun battle. So it's like shoot to kill. It's sort of frontline conservation.
Yeah, negative effects of globalization. All these markets are all intimately connected now. You can have your rhino horn in Hong Kong in no time. Now the tracker that you went with, did he have a gun to theoretically protect you, or not?
Yeah, I think somebody had a rifle, but it looked quite old. It didn't look like it had ever been used, and I don't think they would. Maybe they would do a warning shot, whatever. But a ranger is never going to want to shoot a rhino. But these guys, they do know the animals well, and they know what they're likely to do, and even the individual animals. This is maybe a more dangerous animal. I've got one more rhino story. This was actually a white rhino, but it's from when I first started guiding in South Africa, and we went to this place that had a little hide over a waterhole, little blind, and there was a parking lot, and there was 2 tracks, and one went to a toilet and one went to the waterhole. And a few people wanted to use a bathroom first, and they sort of used the bathroom in this little cubicle, and then we were going to go on to the waterhole. But I guess I took the wrong track, and the toilet track actually continued on, and it was like a maintenance track for the waterhole. And we ended up not being safely inside the hide, but we were actually just standing there at the edge of the waterhole. And this is in Mkuzia, Kumasinga Hide.
Yep.
And we get there, and then there's like two rhinos just drinking, and they just very lazily lift their heads up like that. And I had my clients behind me. I think I probably had like 5 or 6 clients. And without turning my head, just very calmly I said to them, "Okay, very quietly and calmly, we're going to turn around and walk back to the parking lot." And I kind of then looked around, and then all of them were running, including like an 80-year-old man who was like running back to the car.
They weren't waiting for instructions from their mighty guide.
No.
Anyway,
but rhinos they're just fantastic. They're just
I agree. They're special,
and it's just a very sad time that they're under such pressure from poaching.
Yep, indeed. Well, I guess we have a few minutes. I can tell you a couple of my best rhino stories.
I'd love to hear them.
I've never encountered one on foot, so I'm quite jealous. You've done it not once but twice. Those are always some of the most memorable encounters of African mammals, at least if you live to talk about it and remember it. My saddest rhino experience was, actually, I guess all my best rhino encounters have been in Etosha. We were at a water hole, and I saw a whole pride of lions just tearing into a carcass. And it was this big gray animal. And I thought at first it was a baby elephant. And I was trying to figure out, did they actually kill the baby elephant? Because that's a few prides of lions in the Okavango will do that. But it's not a common thing to predate elephants. And generally the babies are so well protected by the herd that lions can't get to them. But then I looked carefully and I saw the feet and I realized it was a rhino. So I guess it had been poached the night before or in the last couple days. And then the lions were just taking advantage. So that was, actually seeing that just kind of brought home the plight of rhinos. The fact that we're driving around during the day in this park looking at these animals, and then there's this whole other world at night where the animals are moving around, but there's also poachers, and then they're killing these things and sneaking them over the fence. And it's a bit sad. One of my first black rhinos in Etosha was at the same at Okukuyo as well. But we basically, I was with a tour group, guiding a tour, and we got out of dinner, and there was this bizarre noise. There was this like low rumbling. It almost sounded like some giant engine, like a generator, that's. And I said, I think we should go check the water hole. So we walked over to the water hole. I didn't know what it was, but I thought this has got to be an animal at the water hole. And it was one of these rhino encounters like you described. There was a mother and her calf, and then there was a big male. And it was the mother that was actually making this low sound. And I think she was sort of telling the male to keep away from her calf. Because sometimes males will kill the calves of females, and then I guess they'll hope they go back into estrus. So she was protecting her calf. But it was just such an impressive noise. And it just went on for like 20 minutes. They just had this bizarre confrontation. They just basically stood there and didn't move. And she just made this rumbling sound. And it's as you describe, it's got this sort of red spotlight, and it's very eerie, and it was a memorable, bizarre scene. It was almost like looking back on some prehistoric time, so like a couple of dinosaurs or something. And one more rhino story. Near the middle camp in Etosha, Halali, I lucked upon a rhino one day. Middle of the day, nobody was around, and this rhino was right next to the road. They tend to be a little bit wary, especially as they've been poached a lot the last few years, these black rhinos. But I basically turned off the engine as I approached this rhino, and I coasted up right next to it. And I got to within about 2 meters of this rhino. And I thought I'd done very well. But as soon as I stopped, this rhino freaked out. And without the slightest hesitation, it charged my vehicle. I couldn't believe how quick the trigger was. It was just, it didn't lift its head, it didn't sniff, it didn't snort, it just, bam, it was in a full charge. And so this thing was so close to my car, there was no time to really do a lot of thinking and reflecting on what's the correct course of action here. So I simultaneously did two things. One part of my brain was calculating, okay, how long is the horn of this rhino? And how deep is it going to penetrate into the side of my vehicle? Because I'm on the right side of the car, and the thing's running right towards me.
Yeah.
So my body I was literally shrinking away from the side of the car. I can almost feel it now. My body was like shrinking away to the left. At the same time, my right hand was turning on the engine, so I can get away as fast as I can, obviously.
Yeah.
And the sound of the engine was just enough to scare the rhino. And he sort of slid to a halt, like a foot away from the car. And I remember this cloud of dust blew over the car, and then of course I just hit the gas and we drove away. It was unbelievably adrenaline pumping.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
So I didn't quite turn out as planned, but it was pretty exciting.
Did you ever see the video footage? I think it was in a safari park in Europe somewhere where some little car got too close to a rhino, and this rhino just started flipping the car.
Yep.
Did you ever see that one?
And it just wouldn't stop, right? It just went to town on this little car.
I mean, they're just incredibly strong and incredibly good at like knocking things over. So it would quite happily pierce the body of the car with its horn, or flip the car, or both. Yeah, they're really impressive animals, just amazingly strong.
I guess those necks are just unbelievably powerful.
Yeah, it's going to be a sad world without rhinos in one day. So I really hope that the conservation projects afoot are going to have some success. Personally, what I think is the best chance is to work in China. Because, you can do it all you want in Africa or whatever, but when there's that demand and that amount of money, unless you do something about that demand, you're not going to really affect things. So
No.
I think you've really got to do education with Chinese people. You want to have things on TV, telling people that it's wrong. And there's actually a story. Do you know Yao Ming?
Right. He did a big
Yao Ming is
anti-trafficking campaign, right?
Yeah, the one he did to begin with was on shark fin soup. So he was a big basketball player in the States, and when he retired, he went back to China, a real national hero. And he goes on TV, and millions of people watch the TV shows. But he started campaigning against shark fin soup, and shark fin soup as well is just an incredibly wasteful thing, and the shark populations around the world are just being devastated by it. And they say his efforts alone reduced the demand for shark fin soup by 25%.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And I was thinking, why doesn't he work with rhinos? And I think he started.
Oh, great.
He started doing some education stuff with Chinese on rhinos. So let's hope there's some more Chinese celebrities and stuff that will make a difference.
I wonder if it's a generational thing, if it's older folks who believe this is efficacious and younger people don't, or if it has been transmitted to the younger people and the problem is going to persist.
I think it is a generational thing, but I think also it's a bit of a status symbol. Whether I think it's just people proving that they've got enough money to buy something like this, so they're just kind of showing off.
Right.
So, it's a very sad situation.
There's a big debate in the conservation community, especially in southern Africa, about whether essentially rhino horn should be legalized. And then people who have farms and have stockpiled huge amounts of horn can flood the market with their horn. It's very controversial. I don't know. It's one of these things. I think it's hard to know how it's going to play out. Is it going to swamp the market and drive the price way down so that it's not worth the time of poachers anymore? Or is it just going to legitimize the whole thing and then just make the problem of poaching wild rhinos even worse? I don't know.
It's a tricky one. I've actually got a friend who wrote a paper for the South African government on whether or not they should legalize the trade in rhino horn. And I think his final advice was that they should, looking at the economics of it and stuff like that. But the problem is, you allow it and then that money is spent on... Because looking after these animals, having armed guards on them and proper fencing and everything, it costs a lot of money. So, you need money to look after rhinos. And all the people that have rhinos on private game farms, they're spending huge amounts of money and they want to be able to recoup that,
And some of them, it's also essentially an economic bet that this will happen. And so they have a strong incentive to lobby for that happening, which isn't necessarily motivated by the best interests of conservation.
No, that's right. But we'll see what happens. But the problem is then, you sell all the rhino horns and then you finish those stocks, and then it comes to you lose your moral high ground. You can't say, okay, well, now it's not right to poach rhinos anymore, even though you've been selling the horn and making money yourself.
Right.
So it's a tough one, and it's certainly never going to be sustainable because they've got such slow rates of breeding.
Right. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Talking about II as well, not to make this too depressing of an episode, but there's some major conservation issues with II as well, which we should probably briefly mention. It's actually the most widespread lemur in Madagascar, which I always found very weird. It's all over the island. It's just almost never seen anywhere. But it's in almost all forest types all around Madagascar, was probably originally pretty common. And the biggest problem with IIs seems to be just superstitious beliefs that it's a bad omen to see an II or to have one near a village, and people just kill them. And it's quite a big thing, and if it's sitting there in a tree chewing on a nut or something, it's quite easy to kill it. Angelique told me that my friend Angelique, who I did an interview with him, he's a local guide up on Amber Mountain near me, but he said a few months ago an II showed up near the town of Joffreville where he lives, and people killed it. So even in a town where there's a big national park there and lots of people make their living as local guides and everything, there wasn't enough awareness to, leave this thing be,
Right.
or to imagine that, wow, if this stuck around, we could potentially bring tourists and see
Make
it.
some money.
And it was just none of that, and it just killed it. Quite sad. And there was actually a giant eye that's now extinct.
Really?
That would have been something to see. It was
Can you
it was
imagine?
like many times bigger than the one that still
Wow.
exists now. A crazy creature. No idea
Yep.
what it ate. Maybe there were bigger nuts back then. Well, thanks, Charlie. We're up to your number one. I guess we're probably going to do a final episode where we each do our number one lifetime mammals.
Maybe.
That'll be could be a fun episode. We'll wrap
Yeah.
up this week's episode. Our natural sound is going to be some ambient noise at the Okakuyo waterhole, which is where Charlie saw his first ever black rhino. It's quite a magical place.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you hopefully in about a week.
Yep. Catch you next time.